My name is Mike Judy. I'm the head football coach at Smyrna High School in Smyrna, Delaware. I just completed my 5th season as head coach, and it has been an absolute pleasure working with my community and serving the kids and families that live in that capacity. We are a small blue-collar community located in central Delaware, and we play in the school's largest division in our state. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about our approach in how we reshaped a traditionally weak program into a winning one, and how we used our two-platoon approach to remedy many of the issues we were facing. I just want to get one thing straight with everybody. In no way am I going to talk to you today about claiming that this is the way. It is our way that worked for us, and my goal is just to provide you with some insight into the process, the decision making, the roadblocks in our plans moving forward in this capacity. There we go. All right. Just want to give you a real quick snapshot of who I am. That's me, the ugly guy up there. You can read the slide here, but I just wanted to, anytime I get a chance, to give a shout out to the people that meant a lot to me. I take the opportunity. You can see some 3 guys that had a major influence on me there to your right at the bottom of the screen. Coach Mike Drass and Coach Knapp and Joe Mangano. Coach Drass was my college head coach. He was the former head coach at Wesley College. Sadly, he passed away about a year ago. And Coach Knapp, who was the offensive coordinator at that time at Wesley College, and is currently the head coach. Those 2 guys pulled me into the office in the spring of my sophomore year at Wesley. I was a 4-year starter at offensive line at Wesley and a 2-year captain for them, and they pulled me in to the office one spring and to really encourage me to get into coaching. And I kind of balked at it, as I never really saw myself in the same light as these great guys that I have had as coaches my entire life. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool, but I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. Well, if it weren't for them, that seed may never have gotten planted in me. And these 2 men gave me a lot of confidence. They gave me, a lot of tools and understanding the game, taking me from a high school player to a college player and eventually into coaching. And they also gave me my first shot at coaching as a graduate assistant at my alma mater, Wesley College. The 3rd guy I wanted to just give a quick shout out to is Joe Mangano. He was my college position coach, and he actually offered me an opportunity to coach in high school and got me started in this aspect of the game. He mentored me, helped me develop me both as a player and as a coach. And heck, you guys out there who've been coaching for a while will understand this. Sometimes the living situation isn't always great when you're a young coach, and Joe and his wife Heather even housed me in his basement at times to help me kind of get through that season, the first season of coaching, and getting our feet on the ground at that program. Without these great men, I wouldn't have been the player I was, nor have had the success in coaching that I've had. So I always want to make sure I give credit where it's due. This picture is important to me because it embodies all the hard work and dedication of not me, but of our kids in our community. And I know it's kind of cut off a little bit there, but that was in 2015 when we won our first of 3 state championships in a row. It was the first one that our school, our program had ever had. And these young guys in this picture really poured their hearts and souls into it. And, they just kind of believed in what we were selling to them. And these guys loved each other as a family, and they did everything they needed to do to win a game. And I'll forever be grateful for these young men, not just for what they did for me as a coach and how they poured their heart into everything, but for what they did for their community. And, the reward, but besides the nice shiny ring and the cool trophy and lots of cool pictures that they'll carry with them forever, is that these guys are now legends. These guys are legendary in this small town, their hometown. These are the guys that did that impossible thing. And not only that, but they set the tone, for the future of our program. And like I said, I'll always be thankful to these young men for laying that foundation for us. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our platoon system to start off, just so you have an understanding of what we do that I think is fairly unique, at least in our area. And if any of you guys out there were thinking of going to platoon, I'd like to, try to answer some of those questions for you. Maybe if you're hesitating or, I don't know if we have enough guys. That's a common question that comes up. And I'm going to be honest, only you can answer that. And, you're going to need to know your kids and know your program. But I'll explain to you a little bit about how we got to that point and the benefits, the pros and cons that it's had for us. So obviously, platoon traditionally means there's an offense and a defense. 11 starters on offense, 11 starters on defense, and usually special teams is a mix of kids that are non-starters. Well, what we found was the way we do it, our platoon system, is that we do have 22 different starters. We have 11 on offense and 11 on defense. But our select few group of guys, typically, traditionally, in our 5 years, it's been our best defensive players, usually about a group of 4 or 5 of them, find their way into a special package on offense that we use a lot. It's typically our goal line package, and we're a 4 wide receiver, 5 wide receiver spread offense, no tight ends, and we'll jump out of that wide open spread in the middle of the field, anywhere up and down the field, and we'll jump into a double tight, double fullback, punch you in the mouth offensive package that we run. And the guys we sub out are good players, but we always sub in the nastiest guys we have into those positions, and we line up, and we do it quickly, and we make teams decide. Am I going to sub? Is the defense going to sub? Run their big bodies on the field, run their skinny guys off to try to play goal line D against us? Or are they in risk getting caught in the transition? Or are they going to leave their smaller bodies out there, their nickel package, which is how most teams have to play us? Are they going to leave them out there and let these 4 or 5 hog mollies really get after them? So it puts the opposing team's defense in a bind. And I'll talk more on that in a little bit here. But again, our platoon system is we have 11 starters on offense, 11 starters on defense, and we have special packages for our best players. We also, on special teams, it's all starters. There are a select few group of guys that may not play special teams. For example, the quarterback may not be on kickoff team, but I coach defensively, and the majority of my defensive backs and linebackers are playing every special teams that we have. So those guys are getting way more than just their, you know, 35, 40 snaps of offense or of defense a game. The reason we went to this, well, I'll get more to that in a second, but the two platoon philosophy that we carry these positives. Number one, it increases our participation. One of the biggest pet peeves of mine as a coach, and I've been around in a lot of different programs, is in high school especially, is I hate seeing on a Friday night, you know, if you're blessed enough to get off a Friday night so you can go see another game, sit in the stands and watch, and I look at their sideline and there's, you know, the same 14, 15, 16 kids playing all night long. And there's 35 kids total on the team, and the other, you know, 15 to 20 kids are just sitting there trying to stay warm or trying to stay dry on the sideline. And it's like, they look dejected. They look like they don't want to be there. Even in the good programs, you know, they're hooting and hollering when they're, you know, when they're supposed to, but that's a tough spot for a kid to be in. And I know in this age of like participation trophies and everything, you know, somebody's going to be like, well, you know, that's what you're supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to be a great teammate and stay there. Yeah, I get that. I get that. But football is also supposed to be really fun. I mean, that's the draw to this game, is it's tough and it's fun. And you get to do it with your boys. And if you're one of those 15 players on the field, it's the greatest game on earth. But when you're one of those 20 players that are riding the bench, waiting, you know, waiting for their opportunity, whether it comes from injury or a guy is out of condition and gassed, you know, that kind of sucks. And I don't like it. So in the programs that I want to be a part of, I want more kids playing. So one of the positives is increased participation. We've had, on average, and I'll show you a slide later of a graph that indicates how many kids we get playing a year. But we'll have 32 to 37 kids play on any given Friday night. 32 to 37 different kids. And that gives them a lot of reason to want to practice hard. Coaches coach one side of the ball. So as a coach, it's really helpful that you can concentrate your efforts as a position coach into one area. And not only beneficial for the kids, but it's beneficial for the coach. You know, he can really take some time in a year or two to start to become kind of an expert in this field or in his position. And the growth I've seen in my coaching staff has been tremendous because of this. This is probably my biggest sell to people is, you know, is the fact that we're able to get double the practice time. So I like to, you know, say, you know, because we always play really well at the end of the year, even with new kids. And I get asked a lot, like, you know, how do you guys develop these guys? Well, it's pretty simple. I take a defensive back who day one in August is doing the same drills. Mostly, we build upon them, of course, but they're doing the same drills and the same fundamentals that they're going to be doing the Thursday before the state championship game. And they've had, you know, 35, 40 practices to get that stuff down. And not only that, they're doing it for 2 hours at a time. So we're getting double the amount of practice time with these young guys to better their fundamentals, to teach them concepts. And I feel that at the end of 1 year, we're giving our kids, at the end of one season, we're giving them 2 seasons worth of practice time, 2 seasons worth of an education on their position. And year after year, we're able to develop guys quickly. It also creates a lot of great competition at practice because, you know, we'll have 11 starters on defense, and when we need to put a scout team out there, guess what? I can put my 11 starters on offense out there. And you can really get after it. The speed, the quickness, the technique is going to be at a high level. even when you're doing run-throughs and walk-throughs, run-throughs, and even thud. So it creates better competition at practice. It also allows for our special teams to be really good because these guys are pretty fresh when they run out, run down the field on kickoff. The last one, probably the most important one, is that it wears other teams down. So we kind of started this 2-platoon thing because we needed a way to compete when we weren't very good, especially at the offensive and defensive lines yet, where we weren't very good yet, we needed a way to try to keep the game close and get into the fourth quarter in a position where it's a winnable game, within a possession or so. When our offensive and defensive lines were very young, in 2014, when we started this thing, we started 5 true freshmen. And some of those guys were playing at the line positions, which is, even in high school, those guys are full-grown men out there. So we needed a way to kind of, ride the wave a little bit, hold back the tide, and get us into the fourth quarter where they're on a scale, on a A through F grading scale. If let's say their offensive line was a bunch of B pluses across the board, and our defensive line, being that they were young or not very good yet, were a bunch of C pluses, that in the first quarter they're going to kick our butts. But then as we continue to get into the game, as we get into the fourth quarter, those B plus kids are now a C plus to C minus, and now our kids can win the battle up front. So wearing other teams down is a critical component to this. Now there are some negatives. Number one, I've been raked over the coals for this many a time, is that you don't always have your, quote, best athletes on the field. I'll get more on that later, but I just kind of always lean to putting your best, most explosive athletes on offense, because then we can dictate when they have an impact on the game. A great example of this is, I caught a lot of flack we had a stud running back, and I'm catching all types of flack from everybody. Why isn't your running back playing defense too? He's amazing. And I'm like, yeah, he's only playing offense because he's a stud running back. And in the fourth quarter, when everybody's beat up, I want him to continue to be a stud and him not being beat up. Like, you're crazy. I'm going to take our best player and have him, run around covering somebody that's never going to get thrown to. You're out of your mind. So that's a negative, though. That could be a negative. And honestly, your JV team, if your JV team is going to be very bare. Bare is as kind of a word as I can give it, because your JV guys, some of those traditional JV guys, are now going to be starters, and the other JV guys are going to be your backups. So your JV program could possibly, depending on your numbers, take a hit here. So we kind of use our JV program strictly for developmental purposes. We're not concerned about wins and losses at all. All we're looking to do is make sure every kid in our program gets to play a game a week to test, kind of take their weekly quiz or test on, on their development and all the practice that they've done. If I had to put numbers on this thing, what's required to be able to 2-platoon, I would leave it at these 3 things. You got to have 6 coaches. You got to have a minimum of 6 coaches with total buy-in to what you're doing. You'll have 3 on offense and 3 on defense at minimum. You need to have enough kids. We've done it with 35 to 40 kids on the sideline, with a large majority of those kids being the 22 starters, obviously, a kicker or punter, and the rest of them being backups. that actually rotate into the game a little bit or a lot of bit if we're doing okay. The other thing you're going to need, logistically speaking, is you're going to need the room to have a full-size practice field. So you're going to need one whole football field to be able to practice offensively and defensively at the same time. We have great facilities where I am, so we've never had a problem with this, but I could definitely see it being a problem. It would take a lot more work logistically for you as the head coach to make this work, but if you had like a half field situation, it would be pretty tough to get your practices done in an efficient manner. Here's that slide I was telling you about. These are the players with significant snaps. We're talking 15 or more on offense or defense in a game. This is the average. So this was 2013. We were right around 20 kids playing significant snaps, which isn't bad, but that was the year before I became the head coach. I watched all the film and counted it up, and I didn't like it. So in 2014, we started the 2-platoon thing. We were about 32 kids getting significant snaps per game. In 2015, which is where we went buck wild, we had 40 kids getting snaps per game. We actually carried 52 kids on the sideline, and 40 of them were getting significant number of snaps on offense and defense. In 2016, it dipped down a little bit, and it's been holding steady at about 35, 36 kids a year since then. Now, benefits to the coaches. Obviously, we talked about this. They could become experts in their field. They also, something that should not be undervalued is the development of a very close bond between that position coach and his unit. And if you really think back to your own football playing experience, you probably were pretty darn close with your position coach at some point. And especially if you played high school and college ball, you probably were really close with your college position coach because of the sheer amount of time you spend together. Well, what if we could do that in high school? And how great could it be for your program to be have your kids exposed to these great guys, great men, and great coaches? So this is awesome for us. Our kids love their position coaches most of the time, and they really, like I said, develop a close bond with them. We talked about packaging. We will utilize special players on the other side of the ball. We have this, our goal line package I mentioned before. We'll sub out 2 of our receivers and bring in 2 tight ends. We'll sub out the 2 slot receivers and bring in 2 fullback types. And these are going to be our 4 nastiest defensive players. And they're going to come sprinting onto the field, get into position, and we run basically 3 plays. And it's good for 3 yards when you need it, and more than 3 yards when all you need is 3 yards. I could probably do a whole clinic on the earthquake, but we'll have to save that for another time. Now, I do sometimes use offensive players on defense. Some of our best players I might take in a nickel or dime or prevent situation. I'll bring those kids on the field. We'll sub out a D lineman or a linebacker. Typically it's a D lineman. And we'll jump to an odd front and play like a prevent where their jobs, the offensive player that's coming to play defense, his job is very limited. Almost to the point of play center field and play the ball in the air. And we're very careful with making sure we do not overload the young man and make him concentrate too much on practicing defensively when he's our starting, wide receiver or slot. I want him to concentrate his efforts there, and we're going to use him sometimes in those situations. So we might practice this once or twice a week for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but that's all. The next big question we get about to platooning is, well, how do you choose which side of the ball the kid is going to play? It's the number one question I field. The basic answer is this. We take our best explosive playmakers / athletes and put them on offense from a skill position standpoint. The only kids that we will consider putting on defense are kids that are willing to tackle. If we have to coax it out of them at all, like, come on, man, come up, you got to hit a little harder than that. Come on, man. If there's anything like that, then they probably shouldn't be playing defense for the varsity team. And then size doesn't play a role in most of our positions. Like, I don't care if our starting tackle is 6'4" or he's 5'9". If he can get the job done and he has the skill set to be able to do with the needs of the position to perform, then he's going to do it. And I don't care what he looks like. Excuse me, gentlemen. Now, Joe Mangano taught me this. Okay, and that was one of my mentors. When you're determining their position, I actually stole the list, quote unquote, from Joe. Back in the day at Garfield High School in Virginia, we had a pretty big team, and Joe was always real intent on making this list and sitting down with your staff and ranking your players, every player in your program, from number 1 to number 65 or whatever. Your top players are listed first. It doesn't matter what position they are. Who's the best player in your program? And you start listing these names. Today we just do it on an Excel. But after you establish the list, you look at the names and brainstorm. Is there a drastic drop-off in ability somewhere in this list? How can we get the best kids maybe above that cutoff line where the ability drops off really, drastically? How can we get these kids on the field? Do we need to change positions? Do we need to adjust our schemes, our packages? Because every great coach that I've ever talked to always harps on how it's the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. Well, if you're going to believe that, then you better get your best Jimmies and Joes out there, and it really shouldn't matter, what position they play. If you have 5 running backs and they're all good, and you run a 2 running back system, well, 3 of those running backs better go to another position. If they're if they're your 5 best players, 3 of those bad boys are going to go to different positions on offense, probably other skill positions. So you got to be a little flexible here. And anyway, a really solid athlete. Do you have a really solid athlete, but a really good football player? Like I had a kid who was a quote linebacker and running back as a freshman, and he was solid. He was really good, but he just wasn't a great running back, and he struggled to make linebacker type plays in space. So we moved him to D end, and the kid ended up as a 2-time All-State kid and Player of the Year finalist, and he's happily playing in college right now. So you just got to be flexible and brainstorm and use your staff. Brainstorm with your staff. Team needs. We play a 4 or 5 safety defense. Well, what if I only have 1 safety returning and 4 decent cornerbacks? You better believe somebody is moving to safety. It's a real simple concept. Recruitability. I just kind of got through this. We always keep in mind the kid's future. We had a kid that we moved from D-line as a sophomore to offensive line as a junior. And he, just like any good aggressive kid that plays defense, he's going to want to continue to play defense. But I kind of talked him into it, saying, I really think that you have a great future at offensive line. So this guy who would have probably been a FCS level defensive tackle, which is awesome he ends up signing at Penn State and is the number 5 guard in the country. But he didn't want to move, but he trusted us. So you may have to move guys based on their recruitability. If a kid wants to play a certain position, like he's been a quarterback all his life, we'll give him a chance. We'll try him out, little tryout period, let him try out being a quarterback. But once they see the writing on the wall, maybe they're going to be 5th on the depth chart, then they probably want to switch positions, and we see this a lot. The last thing and most critical thing here is the positional hierarchy of needs. We actually, much like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we've created a hierarchy of needs, a little form with the most important skill sets for each position in our schemes, offensively and defensively. So I'm going to share some of those with you today and let you guys kind of chew on that, and then we'll probably end the presentation after that. So if you didn't know what Maslow's hierarchy of needs was, this is the example. This is something we learned somewhere in middle school probably, but at the very base of this thing, the foundation is a person's physiological needs. So like they need to breathe, so they need air, water, food, shelter, etc. And as you go up the pyramid, everything becomes more specific. And it's like we live our life where if we do not attend to these particular needs that are at the bottom, none of that other stuff matters. For example, you can live, you need air, you need oxygen to your brain within 7 minutes. Everybody understands that. And if you were getting choked out, then the need to feel love and belonging and intimacy would not matter. The only thing you can think about in that moment of being choking is getting a breath. So these needs need to be met before these needs are met. So we took that concept and we applied it to our football positions. So each position, I believe, in football requires a basic skill set that's either possessed or trainable in order to be effective. The best way to explain this, in my opinion, is everybody, I think, understands that playing quarterback requires way more than just the ability to throw a ball. You can pull a kid off the street that can throw a tight spiral, but we've all been there where that kid just cannot be a quarterback. So I firmly believe that all positions have these basic needs that need to be met for the kid to be successful playing that position. I'm going to show you some examples here. My free safety and rover are 2 deep safeties, although they will play in the box a little bit. At the very bottom of this thing, I need those guys to be able to cover, offensive skill guys. So they require the speed and agility to cover the opposing team's skill guys. Right above that is tackle. They got to be able to tackle. If they can't cover, they're not going to play this position. They'll play a different position if they can tackle. The next up the list is to pursue with great, ferocity, with great angles. Above that is communicate. I put that towards the top of the pyramid because we can get away with a free safety not communicating if somebody else can pick up the slack for him. But ultimately, we want him to be a great communicator, but it's not a complete deal breaker. And then at the very top of this thing, this is like in a perfect world, are these guys great blitzers? Because in some of our schemes, we use these guys to blitz a lot. Cornerbacks, they need to cover the best offensive skill kids the other team has. They need to be able to communicate. And notice I put tackling, I put it a little bit above that. And just in the way that we play our schemes, these guys are in one-on-one situations coverage-wise a lot. And they don't always have to make great tackles and in run support. With the ultimate final goal for our corners is to have that kind of like I don't care mentality. They just lock a kid down for 3 straight plays, and then the kid catches a ball for a first down, and I need my corners to be able to like quickly forget it and just get back out there talking smack again. Our Sam, who is our hybrid player, he's sometimes a safety, sometimes a linebacker. His ability is totally relies on him being able to tackle in open space, followed by block destruction. Then if he can cover, that's great. If he can blitz, that's even better. And then if this kid is your best playmaker, we're going to be a really good defense. Inside linebackers, we have 2 of them. Same thing. They need to tackle in a run box, so like not in always an open space, but in a semi-open space. Block destructions, key reads, find the ball, something that we feel is a little teachable, although if they're natural at it, it's even better. The ability to blitz. And then the last thing on here is coverage, because in our area, not a lot of people attack our inside backers. I don't know why. Defensive ends, we often take those linebackers in our program who struggle to make those tackle box tackles, and we stick them at the end, and they're usually successful. You can take a look at what's required for them. Defensive tackles, and this is the last hierarchy that we created for defense, and then offensively we would have the same. How do we practice? So I spelled practice wrong, sorry about that. So practice schedule, our weekly schedule is we play on Friday night. We give the kids Saturday and Sunday off. That's not just for them, that's for us coaches too. And then on Monday, it's a big film day. So really on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday is where we get the bulk of our work done. And our practices tend to look exactly the same. And I kind of alluded to this earlier. Day 1 practices almost look exactly the same as our very last practice of the season. It's laid out here. We get about 2 hours. So we'll have a quick pre-practice. The kids will get out there and kind of like flex or warm up on their way to practice, because I don't really like wasting time with that. We'll get straight into pre-practice. That's where we'll practice our little special packages for the defensive guys that are playing in our earthquake short yardage offense. We'll do some installs, walkthroughs, and if they don't have anything specific that we need them to work on, they do their everyday drills and get some extra indie time. That's about 15 minutes. We follow that immediately up with special teams. Anyone that's not in special teams of the day is with their position coach starting in individual work. 20 minutes. Then we do a combo period. That's where the offense and defense gets together. Typically small group, so it might be linebackers, D-backs, and offensive skills, and the O-line and D-line are separate, off on their own, still in Indy. We usually do a competition period. We'll do perimeter screen blocking or with block destruction. Sorry for the misspell there, the typo. This is a great period. Really, really coaches them up on. We coach them up on competitive nature and body language and things like that. Really hard, along with fundamentals. Then we get back into individual period. Our defensively will go to like kind of a run fit period, but we'll include some blitzes in there. Then we go to an inside run while the skill players are doing one-on-ones. That's about 15 minutes. This is absolutely brutal. We do inside run every day, live, not tackled to the ground, but everything else is live for about 15 minutes. And the offensive line, defensive line are getting after it. Ones versus ones, Then we go into D team, about 20 minutes, and O team, 25 minutes, or an hour and 25, depending on if my offensive coordinator wants to follow our dang practice plan. Hope you're listening there, Mike Marks. The great thing about team is that we put the best players we can out there. So when offensive team is running their offense, we are taking our starters, typically mixing in some backups, and we're using this time to run the other team's defense. But very important here that we practice our fundamentals. We do our fundamentals and play our way of playing, and we teach them as they're going. So we're an even front traditionally. Let's say the other team we're going to face is an odd front. Well, heck, we just slide the kids over into an odd front and we have them play. And we use our terminology and our techniques and we just get after it. And we really focus on trying to improve ourselves on a daily basis. Well, gentlemen, I hope you found this useful. I'd like to thank you so much. If you want to dive deeper in anything, obviously we're not in Orlando now, but you can contact me. There's my email up there, as well as my Twitter handle. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. If you have more specific questions, or you just like to take a deeper dive into something, I love to talk ball, and anything we do from a program standpoint or anything, it's always on the table. Coaches helping coaches, anything to get the kids better and give them a great experience, I'm in. So thank you very much, guys.